Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Dirty Martini Party. I'm going to be sipping on a little Cabernet. And if you enjoy this video, I hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. For my paint today, I have acrylic paint. My colors are Mars Black, Burnt Umber, which I'll call brown, Titanium White, Fire Red, Green Oxide, and Deep Yellow. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I will be using. For my tools today, I have a piece of white chalk for drawing. You could use any drawing utensil, but that's what I'll be using. And I have 3 brushes today. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 9 round brush, and I have a number 1 round brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. And if you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the fancy piece of chalk, and all that good stuff is all included in the kit. But if you have your own materials, there's also a link down below where you can download a free image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are black, brown, and white. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke, and I will not be washing my brush throughout this process, so that way my colors will blend into each other. What I'm really going for is kind of a gradient from it being dark at the top to a little bit lighter at the bottom. So I'm going to start with black and brown on my brush at the same time, and I'm using a lot of both, and I'm just going to be going back and forth, left to right. I don't want this all to be totally black, and I know that black definitely has a way of taking over your canvas. So I used a lot of black on that first kind of scoop of paint. The next time I just picked up brown without washing my brush, and what'll happen, because I didn't wash my brush, I still have black on it, and the black and the brown are going to start to blend nicely together. And when I'm doing these large gradients, you'll notice that I often will go back and forth, up and down the canvas to get those colors to blend in with one another. And I am using a good amount of paint, so my paint stays nice and fluid throughout the process. And I am using a student grade paint, which tends to be on the thinner side and stays a little bit more moist throughout the process, which allows me to get this nice blend going. But if you're using a thicker paint, you could certainly add a medium to it to get it to be a little bit more on the fluid side, and or you could also do a second layer, which I might even opt to do on my own, just before I go on to the next step. If I don't find that this is smooth enough for me and that the colors haven't blended the way that I want them to, or if there's evident brush strokes that I'm not too fond of, I will definitely do another layer. But as I'm getting down towards the bottom, I don't have much black left on my brush, so you're probably noticing it getting naturally a little bit lighter as it's coming down the canvas. And in a second, I'm going to start introducing my white along with my brown. So I have brown on my brush now with a little bit of white, and then it's going to get a little bit lighter as it comes down that canvas. You could go for a more gray look if you didn't want to use so much brown, but I wanted there to be a little bit of a visual contrast between my my olives that we're going to be putting on there, as well as I'm going to have a little bit of black color in my martini glass. So I wanted to make sure that there was enough visual contrast in this background, which is why I'm going for a lighter kind of color down at the bottom and a little bit more warm with the brown in it. And then I'm just going to kind of keep going back and forth until I feel like this gradient is nice and blended. If your paint is still wet, you can do one of my tricks, which is kind of going in this diagonal motion while it's still wet. It helps it blend it a little bit better. And then I just go back and forth again to make sure that they all are nice and blended together. And if you feel that you need to do a second coat, feel free to do so. And we will be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got your background done, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our martini glass. So I do want to forewarn you that before we do this step, we're going to be using our chalk. So you're going to want to make sure that your canvas is dry. You may have noticed that I did a second layer on mine because I wanted to make sure it was a nice smooth gradient. So if your background is done and if it's not dry, you can either, take an extra long break if you'd like to, or you can dry it with whatever kind of fanning method that you'd like, a paper towel, or you could blow on it if you'd like. Or you can do what I did and just take out a blow dryer if it's not dry and blow dry it that way. That's my quickest method to do it. So I'm going to take out my chalk. I'm going to give you a couple of pointers or dots, which you can see I've already got visible on my canvas. So that way I can help you to plan it out as well. The first dot that you'll want to make is this one in through here. So this is kind of dead center in my canvas. So you can visually go about halfway over from the left or the right, and then come about halfway down your canvas and make yourself a little bit of a marker. Then you go directly below that until you get maybe about 2.5 inches away from the bottom of your canvas. You can make yourself another marker. Then you can visually just kind of split the difference between these two and go left or right, whichever way you want to go first. And you're going to stop about 2 inches away from the edge of the canvas and do the same thing on the other side. So this is going to be the top and the bottom and the left and the right of the main opening for the martini glass. You're going to draw yourself a really big oval. So your brain might work a little bit differently than mine does. I'm going to go from the center and go towards my edges, but the trick is you want to make sure that you round these edges. So you want to start that curve before you get to your marker. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of going straight for a little while, but I'm starting my curve before I get to my marker. And then I'm going to do the same thing from the bottom. So I go straight for a little while, and then I start to curve, and I need these edges to look like they're rounded. When we make dots like this, top, bottom, left, right, sometimes we end up with almost like a diamond type shape, a diamond shape. So you want to make sure that these edges are in fact rounded as opposed to pointy. So even if you have to kind of adjust it a little bit, and you can certainly, if you're using chalk, then it's an easy correction. You just kind of keep manipulating it until it looks more like a curve around these edges as opposed to a point. And then once I've done that, I'm going to come directly down to the bottom of my canvas, and I'm going to go to the right about 2 inches, make myself a marker, and to the left about 2 inches and make myself a marker. I'm going to come up from those and out just a little bit, maybe about another inch or two, and that's where I'm going to connect to the stem of my glass. So up and out, maybe about another inch or two, and this is a natural kind of curve from the edge into here. And then I have one more line I'm going to make, and it's going to be the water line. So I'm going to come, or the liquid line, the martini liquid line, the alcohol line, whatever you want to call it. the liquid inside the glass. I'm going to come up from here, maybe about another 2 inches, and do the same, make myself a marker, and do the same thing over on this side. Come up here, maybe about 2 inches, make yourself another marker, and you're going to make yourself a curved line that resembles the top of your glass. So this again is going to be a continual, well, I guess I could have given you a marker from here too. Come down here about maybe 1.5 inches or so. And then I'm going to give myself another curve like this, and that's going to be my fluid line. And then we're going to switch to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your martini glass outline, you can put your piece of chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the first layer of the martini glass. So now that we've got the outline into place, we've got to kind of put a layer on there to get the party started. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to do this is first I'm just going to follow my chalk marks and do an outline with gray paint. So I'm going to take a little bit of my black and a little bit of my white and just spin them together. I'm just going for a medium gray kind of color. I don't need a ton of paint, but I definitely want to have enough that I can keep the paint nice and fluid as I go through this process. So I've got my gray color, and I'm not going for perfection here because I know that I'm going to have a bunch of other elements to the glass that are going to provide me times where I can disguise certain things. So if I go about this and get too terribly concerned that my lines are perfect, there's not really a need to do that because I'm going to be showing you how to do a painterly type reflection along your edges, along the water line. So don't worry too much if your lines aren't perfect at this point. What you do want to make sure that you do is just kind of get it to look like the lines belong together. Oh, I have a ruler down here that I don't need. So as I'm coming along this edge, I know that this is the outside edge, so I want to make sure that that flows into the outside edge down below, and I want to make sure that the edges along the stem of the glass flow into the side of the glass. So that's probably the only structural thing that I need to be a little more on the accurate side. As far as the fluid line that we're putting in here, that's okay if it's a little bit wobbly because we're going to have olives who are partying within it, so they could be messing up the straightness of it. So you don't have to really be terribly concerned about that either. And then once I've got the gray line on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to blend it in with the fluid within the cup and get some kind of movement or color started underneath it too. So I still have just the gray on my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm just using kind of the remnants of it to start this fluid type look that we're going to have within the glass. And then I'm also going to be using this a bit in the water as well. So the alcohol, I'm going to keep calling it water, so I apologize for that. So now that I've got that kind of started in through there, I have it more over here and more over here. I'm going to pick up some black paint without washing my brush, and I'm going to start getting a darker area of my fluid along this right hand side. And again, don't worry terribly if it is not perfect. I am going to be doing it in a curved fashion, as if the fluid is almost in a circular type of motion within that glass. But again, if you don't get yours perfect, no worries. I do want this to blend in a little bit with this center color as well. So right now I'm going to pick up a bit of brown without washing my brush and get it to almost blend right in with that center area. And again, if you don't get it to blend 100%, it's going to be all right. This is just the start of this. We've got many more little details that we're going to be putting on that will help to make this look a little bit more realistic, as you know, realistic olive parties go. And then I'm going to pick up a bit more black, and I'm going to do almost like a shadow type area underneath the top lip of this glass in through here. So just a bit of black, and I'm getting it to blend in a little bit with that background color. And again, it doesn't have to be blended in perfectly. We're just giving it the illusion of a little bit of a shadow underneath the edge, and I'm not going all the way around. This is going to be towards the top portion. You can also put a bit of water on your brush if you want this to blend in a bit more. You can utilize water on your brush to get that paint to blend into the neighboring color. And then I'm going to put this darkness one more area. It's going to be down in my stem of my glass. So I just picked up some more of the black paint, and I'm putting a bit down in this area here where I put the lightness. This is going to help to start with that reflective look that we'll be achieving by the end of this. And then I'm just putting a bit more down at the bottom, something like this. And again, don't worry about it being perfect at this point, because we've got another layer that we're going to be adding onto it later. And let's see, where else do I want? I think maybe a touch of how I put the shadow over there. I think I'm going to put a little bit of that shadow underneath this bottom edge on the front as well. So something like this. And again, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now, putting these shadowy areas in where I feel that they belong. But we will be, like I said, having another step where we will finalize all of this. But all of this, we're going to finalize all of it with our olives. Sometimes my brain just has fun all on its own. So we're going to use the same medium brush for the next step. So once you've got the beginning of the martini glass, you can wash and dry that medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our olives. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using green and yellow paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm pre-mixing myself the main coat that I perceive to be a very olive color, the natural color of an olive. So I'm going to take my green paint. I know that I'm not going to be utilizing this color anywhere, so I'm going to create my olive color with as much of this original green that I had. So I'm just going for almost like a little bit more of a yellow green. For me, you might, maybe your green is already as yellow as you want it to be, but I'm just going for a little bit more yellow. So I'm adding some of my yellow into my existing green, and that's going to give me what I perceive to be a nice base coat for a natural looking olive. So once I've got my desired color, what I'm going to do is I am just going to be creating olive type shapes all over. Boy, this is going to be a tongue twister, a natural tongue twister for me the whole time. olive shapes all over your canvas, and they're just oddly shaped ovals. They can be a little bit more bubbly at the bottom or the top, where you can have fun with it. And mine are just partying and jumping and relaxing within the martini and around the martini, and I'm going to place them in some fun places. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle. I've got one who is just lounging on the side of the glass somewhere in through here, and your paint will likely be pretty darn see-through after this first step. Don't worry about it. This is just intended to be a base coat for our, I almost called them animals, but they're not animals, they're olives. So this is just our base coat for our olives. So that one's going to be kind of leaning back, relaxing. I've got one who's going to be kind of jumping or diving into the depths of the martini glass, somewhere in through here. So that's going to be that one. And I'm using a good amount of paint, so I have a pretty solid base coat. I'm going to have one who's going to be like diving in through here. So I'm crossing over the edge of my my glass in some areas, just so I can maintain a really nice three-dimensional effect as I go through this. But in doing so, I am going to have areas that are going to be a little bit more difficult to cover with the paint, and I'm okay with that. I will put as many layers on there as I feel necessary to achieve the look that I want, but I'm going to place them in places that I find interesting. I also have one that's down in the deep depths of my glass, somewhere down in through here, so I'm just going to put a marker down there for that one. I'm going to have one that's over here on the side. I don't know if this one is on his way to the party, or if he's leaving the party, or if he's falling off of the glass, or what this one is doing. But we're going to have a fun one over here. I'm going to have one sitting and relaxing, kind of just watching the party over in this vicinity. Maybe this is somebody who feels, or an olive that feels like they're going to just jump in at any time, or they're just watching all of the other ones, watching all of the other olives enjoying the festivities, while the person who was drinking the olive has stepped away from their olive glass. So then I'm also going to put one big huge one up here. This one's going to look like he's right in the big, totally jumping and ready to just dive right into this cup, and this one's probably going to look like it's the closest to us because it's definitely the biggest one. So it is perception for the perspective here. The bigger they are, the closer that they're going to look to the viewer, just because most olives are similar in size. I'm going to put the hint of one up in this corner here, just so I can carry my color up for good balance throughout the painting. And then I think I'm going to have a couple over here. Maybe these guys are jumping over from the side, so maybe we'll have one in through here. And you can put them in front of each other. These two, I'm going to have two over here. One of them is going to be kind of in front of the other one, so I don't know what the order they decided to jump into the glass or out of the glass. This one's going to be maybe diving from above. I don't know. I'm just having fun with where I want them to be placed. This one's going to come in front of that one a little bit. So you can certainly have fun. Once you've seen how I'm going to organize mine, you can certainly organize yours whatever way that you want. And if you feel that you want to do a second coat on them just to have nice full coverage, feel free to do so. But we are going to be using, let's see, what are we going to use for the next step? We're going to use this same brush. We'll use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your main coat of your olives on here, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the shadows on our olives. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and green paint, or my pre-mixed olive color green paint. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to, on each olive, I'll put a dark line of like black down on the bottom side that kind of trails up the edges a little bit, and then I'll pick up some of my green and blend it in. So for me, the light source is coming from above, so all my shadows are going to be underneath these little characters, and they are round. These are round objects, so I want these not only to be a shadow from the light source, but it's also going to create a contour shadow, which will make the viewer feel that this is a round object. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush. You don't need a lot of black paint because black can very easily take over. So I have just a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to start by just creating this outline along the bottom edge of that particular olive. then if you have a ton of paint on your brush, just wipe it off on your paper towel, and without washing your brush, pick up some of that original green, and you can get these two areas to blend in together. So I don't want the shadow to go all the way into the entire olive, but I do want it to kind of creep up and get it to blend in with that center area. So I just kind of keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel and picking up that original green, so that way I can get it to gradually just blend in with it. And it might take you a couple of tries to get it to blend the way that you want it to. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I do want to get this all the way to the edge over here though, because I still have a bright green outline down at the bottom. So you want to just make sure that you cover up that that the shadow goes mostly to the edge. When it's on the sides, it doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to the edge, but underneath that dark part, you'll probably want it all the way. And then I'm just going to move on to my next one. So I picked up some black paint, and I'm going to bring this down towards the bottom and then up the sides a little bit. And again, not far up the sides. Then I'm going to pick up some of my original or my olive green color and get it to blend in. And then again, if you feel like you've got too much black on your brush, you can just wipe it off on your paper towel, or worst case scenario, you can wash your brush in between, but you'll want to get these colors to just blend in with one another. And if you don't get a perfect blend at this point going into the main body of that area, don't worry about it, because we're going to be doing the highlight of that olive as well. So the highlight will help to blend that center section in. So again, don't worry if you don't get a perfect blend going into the middle. I put my black on there, then I picked up some of my green, and I continue to wipe my brush off on my paper towel so I can get these two sections to blend in with one another. And again, a worst case scenario, if you need to, you can wash that brush in between. But having these colors wet with each other is how you'll get them to blend in nicely together. So that's how I can do each one kind of on the fly like this. And I guess if you have a little bit of a light edge at the bottom, that's all right. I don't really need to do this one because the dark edge is down below my canvas. Same thing with this one. I think I might do a little bit on those side edges, but not much, because I'm not seeing the whole bottom of this particular olive. So I'm just going to do a little bit over on these sides, just enough to give you that illusion of contour, but not necessarily the illusion that we're seeing the bottom of the olive itself. And if you do too much, just bring in some of that original olive green, and then you just move on to the next one. So I'm picking up a bit of black on my brush. I'm going to bring this shadow down on the bottom and a little bit up those sides. Wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up some of my original green or my olive green, and get it to blend in. And then just keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel and getting this center color to blend in. And again, you can see that, you know, I've done this once or twice before, so my blending is comfortable for me, and I can maneuver my brush, and I know the quantity of paint that I need. But if you're doing this for the first time, it might take you a couple of layers to get this on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and do these larger ones. And as you get up into this darker area up towards the top of your canvas, if you have a lot of black up here, you might not be able to see the edge of your olive because black next to black. So you can leave a tiny little sliver of your green around the edges, and that will allow the viewer to be able to detect the edge of that particular object. So I started with my black, I just kind of rubbed it in a little bit, and now I'm going ahead and adding that original olive green to the rest of it. And then I just have a couple more. I do have the two that are overlapping each other over on the left-hand side. I'll tackle those in just a minute, but let me just get this one all nice and finished here. I think I'm gonna hit this one next. This one doesn't have much on it, so I'll just put a tiny bit of black on my brush. I just really want to get this one to have a nice coat up and through here with a little bit of a shadow down at the bottom. And then I've got these two in through here. So I'm going to tackle this bottom one over here, getting my black on that bottom. And then what I'll do is I'll pick up my original olive green and get it to blend in. So you can see I'm pretty systematic with this, and I've got my process down. I know that, again, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect at this point, but I do want to give the illusion of this shadow down at the bottom, considering my light source is up at the top. I want this olive to be in front of the other one, so I'm going to make sure that I have that shadow really well defined here. And again, these are more, you know, they're shadows from the light source, but they're also those contour shadows that are going to help to tell the viewer that this is in fact a round object. And then we are going to use this same, actually, let's use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on your olives, you can put your medium brush away in your water cup, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting our little pimento peppers inside of our partying olives. So I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to be using red paint. So for me, I'm going to consider the peppery pimento part to be at the head. You can certainly put it wherever you want, but I figured it would be a fun place to put it. And of course you can stuff your olives with whatever you want. Personally, I like a little piece of garlic in my olives, or onions, but I'm gonna, for aesthetic purposes, I'm putting the red in it. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm using red paint, and I'm just doing a little oval wherever I want that particular top of the head to be, I guess. And I'm using a thin layer of paint right now because I want to add some dimension to this. And I know that my red paint is translucent, which means that it's see-through. So I'm going to use a thin layer right now on this first pass, and then before I'm done, this one's going to be upside down, so I'm putting it right here. Before I'm done this step, I will put a thick area on a certain section of the pimento pepper, which will give it a little bit of dimension. I'll show you what I'm talking about, but right now I'm just using a thin layer. So the head of this one's going to be, he's diving into the fluid, so I'm going to put this one down here, and this one I think I'm going to have over here. And of course your peppers can be sticking out, or they can be kind of sunken in. I've seen it in person all different kinds of ways. So I'm going to go ahead. This one's going to be kind of a larger one. So I'm going to make this one pretty big. And again, you can leave a little sliver of the green around all the sides, or you can give it the illusion of it sticking out. So whatever way totally works. But I'm just using a little thin layer because I know that when it dries, it'll be a little bit darker, and I can utilize that darkness in a dimensional step. So I've got this last one up here. This one's really big because this is my biggest character I've got going on here. And again, these are organic shapes. They don't have to be perfectly cylindrical. They don't, I mean, somebody stuck their finger in these olives to put the pepper in there, so they don't have to be perfect. So now that I've got the base coat on there, I'm using a lot of red paint on my small brush, and I'm going to put a really thick section of it, and you can see that it's really much brighter on that right hand side. I know that my highlight is going to be over here on my olive, so if I want this to look three-dimensional on the inside, I will put my highlight on the opposite side, so of where the exterior highlight's going to go. So I'm putting this one here, I'm going to put, if my highlight's going to be here, I'll put the highlight in the pimento back here. This one is not really going to matter much because it's underneath the head. Let's see, what else are the ones we got? We got this one down here. This one's going to be in the fluid, so that one's probably not going to matter a whole bunch. This one, I know my highlight on my outside is going to be here, so I'm putting my highlight on my inside over here. And you can see that because I'm using a thicker amount of the red, it is more concentrated and you're not going to be able to see through it as much, which is why it appears to be brighter. So on this one, again, I'm going to put this one over here because the highlight of my character is going to be there. And then same thing with this, my highlight's going to be here. So the highlight on the inside is going to be back on this side over here. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your pimento peppers inside all of your olives, you can go ahead and put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I am adding the highlights to my olives. So again, this is going to be dictated by the light source, which for me is up above, and the shape of the olive itself, the form. So when I'm doing these highlights, let's say I'm working on this one, my light source is up above, so I would naturally put my highlight here, but my object is round, so my highlight has to kind of travel around the ball or around the object. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are yellow and white, which will be my dominant colors. And if I need to, I will go back into that original olive green that we used. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to load my brush with yellow paint, and I'm going to put in place the area that I want the highlight to be. So for this one, for instance, I definitely want my highlight up here on the upper left, and I want it to travel in through that center area. So I've got it up in through here. And I know that, again, my yellow is translucent or see-through, so we're going to see the green underneath it. And then I'm just going to rub it out so it blends in with the rest of the olive. I'm going to brighten it in a minute with white, but this is how I'm starting. I'm starting with just my yellow paint, and I'm blending it into that green paint. It makes it easier for me to do it this way because as soon as I start using the white on my brush, I know that I'm going to have to wash my brush every time I go to the next olive, and because it'll kind of muddy the blending process. So I want this yellow to really blend in nicely with the green, and this is a nice clean way to do that. Just do the yellow first, and we'll put that extra highlight on with the white in a minute. So again, I'm just adding my yellow where I want that brightest highlight to be, and then I blend it in with the rest of the green. And again, it might take you a couple minutes to get the intensity, but you can see where the yellow is thicker, it's more yellow, or you can see the brightness of it more, and then where I fade it or get it to be thinner into that green, it just has a natural gradient. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I want a big highlight in this area, and then I'm going to get it to blend in with the rest of that green paint. And if you end up putting too much yellow or it goes too far, you blended it all the way into the rest of the olive and you didn't mean to, that's okay. You can always just pick up some of that original green and just kind of reverse it a little bit. So if you put it too far in, you can just certainly reverse it by bringing some of that other green back. So I'm going to get some in through here. Just get my paper towel in my hand. I like to control the quantity of paint on my brush at all times. So you'll find that I usually have a paper towel in my hand or right next to me, so I can control. If I've got too much paint on my brush, just wipe it off and let it work the way I need it to work. If you have too much paint, sometimes it can just get away from you and you just keep blending and blending and blending, and you cover up everything that you originally had done that you don't want to cover up. So I've got my bright highlight in through there, or the start of where I want it, and then I'm just getting it to blend in with the with the neighboring green. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect blend right now because you're going to be adding in just a second. We're going to add an even brighter highlight with the white, but this just kind of gets it started. This big, huge one up here, this one is going to be my fun one. He's almost going to be probably the focal point one because he's so big, but that's good. As long as I execute him the way that I want to, I'll be just fine. But if he ends up looking not the way that I want him to be, then we'll have to just keep tweaking him. But I think he's going to be super fun. I don't know why I'm calling it a he. Maybe, I don't know why. I don't know why. I think I need two more. I need one down here, get this highlight on, and then this little one in through here. Sometimes you can do two at once if you got enough paint, and you can get it to stay wet throughout the process. You have to keep it wet as you're blending it, but again, because it's nice and translucent, I can just get it to go thinner and thinner as it goes into that green, and it helps. So now that I've got all the yellow in place, now I'm using yellow and white to get that bright place on. So I just put a little bit of white on my brush. I want this bright area to be up at the top. I put it on with a little bit of white, and now I'm picking up a little bit of yellow, and then I'm gonna do that same exercise where I get it to fade out into the neighboring colors. So you could get this to be super duper bright, or you can get it to be subtle. It's gonna be a visual preference. The brighter it is in contrast with the darker area of the olive being the bottom, the more three-dimensional it's going to look, and the more it's going to show that there is a bright light source in the nearby atmosphere of sorts. So you can certainly play with the intensity on this. If you want it to go really bright, just use much more white, and I just kind of keep tweaking it with these layers until I get it into the blend that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lighter area right up at the top where that bump of sorts is, and put a little bit of yellow on my brush and just get this to blend in. And again, quantity of paint on your brush is a big thing that you want to try and control, because if you have too much paint on your brush, what's going to happen is your brain is just going to tell you keep blending, and before you know it, the entire thing is just one solid color. So if you need to control the quantity of your paint, or do more layers on top of it to get it to go into that brightness that you want, you just got to keep, you have the power of the quantity it's in your control how much paint is on your brush. So just allow for whatever you need in order to get it as bright as you want it to go, or as dark as you want it to go. So I've got my highlighted spot, and then I just kind of rub it out into the remaining areas. And again, it might take you a couple times to get that intensity the way that you want. And between every olive, I am wiping my brush off on my paper towel to get that kind of clean spot of white that I want. I get my white, I pick up a little bit of yellow and get it to slowly or gradually blend out with the neighboring colors. And again, my brightest of my bright area doesn't necessarily have to be on the edge. It can be sometimes, but it doesn't always have to be. So just know that that brightest spot doesn't always have to be right on the edge. It can be within the center, because it's going to be the part that is the closest to that light source. So if you have a round object, it doesn't always just have to be on the edge of that object. It could be on the inside. If this is bumping out more, it's going to be in through here as opposed to the edge. So, and again, you get to tell the viewer where the light source is. So if you want your light source somewhere else, you can certainly play with it in a different spot. But I put that white on, and then a little bit of yellow, and get it to blend out. And you can, again, get it to be as bright as you want. And sometimes it takes a couple of layers to get this on. If you feel like you've done too much, again, you can come back with some of that original green. Like I want to get this to blend a little bit more. I just picked up a little bit of my original green to make sure that I blended this in. I don't typically use a lot of water on my brush when I'm blending like this in a constant layer type process, because if I'm using a lot of water on my brush, I run the risk of lifting my paint off of my canvas. So sometimes water's good if you're just doing one layer and you're letting it dry and coming back and doing another layer. But if you're doing layer after layer as quickly as I am here, that with water you may run the risk of lifting that paint right off of your canvas. So just know that working with your thickness of paint, the viscosity of your own paint, your paint might be thicker than mine, you might need more paint, you might need less paint, and you might even want to thin it out. If it's not fluid enough, you could use a little bit of a medium, of a liquid medium on your brush or within the paint to get it to be a little bit more fluid for you to get those blends the way that you want them. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this really large one up here. And after you get these highlights on, you can certainly just fiddle with them as much as you want to until you get them in the bright intensity that you want, or get them to blend with those neighboring colors as much as you want. And we will be, let's see, what are we going to use for our next brush? I think we're actually we're gonna switch to our tiny brush. So once you got your beautiful highlights and your olives look all nice and three-dimensional, you can put your medium brush away, take out your tiny brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are doing the first layer of our faces and our limbs for our cute little olives. So for all of our olives, sorry, I'm gonna be saying that in my sleep later. So I'm using my small brush. I'm gonna be using just black paint, and at times I'm probably gonna have a little bit of water in my paint or on my brush, so that way I have a nice fluid brush stroke. So you can even take some of your black and just add a touch of water to it, so it's like an ink consistency. And then if your brush isn't already super pointy, one of my tips for having a nice pointy brush is you take it and you put it on the side of your palette and you spin it on this within your paint on the side of your palette, and that will repoint your brush every time. So once you've got your ink consistency paint, I'm going to do my faces first, and then I'll do my limbs after that. I just am picking fun little expressions. You can look up emojis or anything of that nature just to get some cute little, ways to put eyes and mouths and stuff. Mine are just going to look like they're relaxing or they're having fun, jumping and enjoying their olive party. So I've got a little bit of black, watered down black paint on my brush. I'm going to have this one looking like he's just diving into the water, or into the liquid. So his mouth is going to be open in through here. And again, I'm just using black paint. I've got some fun eyebrows, something like that. Maybe this one goes up a little bit higher. I've got the inside of his eyes like that. And again, just have fun with these. You can have them all looking the same. You can have them with different expressions on their face. This one's going to look like he's just chilling. He's got a nice big grin on his face and his eyes are closed. So I'm just going to put some little downward motions like that. I think I'm going to have, this one's going to be upside down, and he's going to be kind of a little nervous that he's upside down. So I'm going to have his eyes a little closed and squinty, something like that. But he's happy. So the mouth is going to be in a smiling type position. You can put eyelashes on, you can have whites to the eyes, you can have so much fun doing whatever you want. And this one is a little bit nervous that he's going to crash into him, so we're going to put him with a really fun like squished face. So I'm going to have his mouth is going to be almost like a swishy kind of mark with it open on the right hand side. He's going to have a little squinty eye on the right, and then he's going to have just a circle for the left eye, like this one's still open. That's cute. And then let's see, who else? This one needs a face. This one I'm going to have like I don't know if he's scared or having a good time. I'm going to have the mouth open like it's like screaming or yelling like woo! He's totally into it. He's having probably the most fun of them all. But again, don't know if he's scared or excited. He's going to have his eyes closed too. They're going to be kind of like in a squinty motion. I like these squinty eyes. I think they really sell the expression of these characters. So again, you can look up all kinds of different ones. They're so much fun. And then I've got one on this little one over here. I think this one looks like a girl to me. So she's going to have this cute little smirk on her face like this, and then we're gonna see maybe just her little cheek, and then one of her eyes. We'll probably see more of this eye than the other eye. She's got a cute little eyebrow, and then maybe we just see a little piece of the other eye in through here with a little bit of the eyebrow. Now I need to give them some limbs. So since I'm here, I'm just going to start with this one here. She's going to have a couple of legs, and these they're cartoon legs, so you can really make them whatever way you want. But she's going to be kind of sitting over here. I am going to give them like knees and little feet, just so I have some semblance of, I don't know, anatomy, I guess. But yours certainly do not have to be exactly like mine. She's going to be just kind of like chilling on the edge here. I'm going to have her arm coming about halfway, maybe right about here. She's going to hang on to the side of the martini glass. So like that, maybe a little thumb, and then the rest of the hand in through there. I don't see her other arm, so that's fine. Let's see. We're going to do this guy right here. He's definitely having the time of his life. The olives, an olive party. They've never had one before. This is their first one that they're having. So you can really just, and I'm not making real hands. I'm just making almost like snowman fork hands. You can really do anything that you imagine. This leg over here is going to be just kind of flying out in the open. We've got a knee, we've got a leg, we've got a little foot. And then I've got another one that maybe we just see part of it over in through here. There's the knee, there's the leg, there's the foot. And then let's see, this one he's diving in the water. So I've got a leg coming like this and like this. And there's the little foot. And then maybe this other leg is kind of straight out with a little foot. The arms, I don't think you'd even really see them, but if you want to have hints of them going into the glass, you certainly can do that. This one I'm not going to have any on. That one I'm not going to have any on. This guy totally, he's chilling. So he's going to have his legs in the water coming out from here, and he's just going to have this one kind of straight out with a little bit of a foot in through there. And then this leg is going to be kind of up a little bit, like he's got his knee up out of the water a little bit, like that. And then I don't even think I've got these one properly proportioned, but that's okay. It's all right. It's an olive. Maybe one of his legs is longer or shorter than the other one. I'm going to have his olive hands behind his head, or her head, whatever gender you would like your olives to be is fine by me. This is going to go out here and maybe just touch the side of the head like that. I'm going to have one over on this side, something like this. And then this one's going to go behind the head over here. Oh my God, this is so fun. I like making fun characters. And then I've got these two guys in through here. This one's got his legs coming down, his knee like this, and then maybe a foot like that. He's just jumping. He's jumping, and he's afraid of that other guy who's going to bump into him, or girl, or whatever that other one is, crossing over the legs like this, and he's got his arms back like he's in a he's in a full-on, I don't know, going to be a belly dive or something. Little hand over here. And then I got this one up here. I'm running out of my black paint. There we go. I'm going to have a couple of little legs over here. I don't want this one to go off the canvas, so I'm making sure that I get it in the canvas here. This one's going to be up here, and then we got another foot up here. And again, I'm just thinking there's some knees, there's some feet. I am going to add a highlight on them in a minute, which is going to make them much more visible. So if you're having difficulty seeing some of them, especially up in the top region where you have lots of black, know that when we put the highlight on them, you'll be able to see them much better. And then this one's going to have an arm going right in front of this face over here. So that's probably why he's so concerned that he's going to get hit, because this hand is going right in front of his face. And then we are going to be using this same, oh, did I mess on? Oh, I need some limbs on this one. I knew that I was missing something. So that'd be funny if I left that one without the limbs, but let's give him some limbs over here. So he's got a couple of arms. One is going to go over here. These are just going to be straight out kind of thing. I was having so much fun with his face, I guess I just totally missed his little limbs. And then I got another arm coming over here. Maybe this one goes off of my canvas. And then I've got some legs. This leg is going to go something like this, and maybe this one's going to come pretty close, if not all the way down to my glass, and then maybe this one sticks out a little bit more. Maybe we've got this one coming down like this. They're so much fun because you can make them like oh, that one almost looks a little broken. We don't want to give her. Oh, I guess they could have broken arms or legs, right? That maybe they were having so much fun they broke their arm or leg. There we go. That works. And then I don't need any on that one. I think I got them all now. Yeah, got them all. So we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got these adorable faces and limbs on, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are finishing our glass and the fluid within the glass. I'm going to be using my medium brush, but after you watch me, you might opt to also use your small brush. So it just depends on how comfortable that you are with it. The colors that I'm going to be using are black, white, and brown, and this is going to include, in essence, kind of getting this rim to look like it belongs with the glass, so it's not too distinct of an outline. We want to finish or put all of the liquid in place again, so this doesn't look like such a distinct line, and then making little ripples around the olive and maybe some little splashes. We're going to be putting a reflection, a green reflection of the olives on the liquid and on the glass in another step, so we're not going to tackle that just yet. So if you see that in the reference picture, we'll do that in the next step. I just want to keep it separate because we don't want to make a mess on our canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush, and this is one of those steps that you could utilize a little bit of water with your brush in order to make it so everything looks like it kind of blends together. My main goal here is to get this outline to not look so much like an outline. So I have black paint on my brush, and I'm going to continue to do this in the motion or the direction that the fluid, I feel, would be moving in, or yeah, moving in. We've got things in that water. I just picked up a bit of brown. We've got the olives within the water that are going to make this water, or this liquid, sorry, I keep calling it water, I don't know why, make this liquid move. So I am doing it in the motion that I feel that it would go. And if you end up painting over some of your legs or to avoid it looking like you're painting around them, that's okay, because your legs are black. You'll still see them a little bit anyways, and you can always paint them back over if you need a correction on them. So I just picked up a little bit of brown so I can get this line to blend in with the main area. And the way that I'm doing this is I am having the right side of the water the darkest, the liquid the darkest, and the left side is going to be a little bit lighter. And if you feel that you need to enhance these in any way or add more of the original background color or anything along that line, feel free to do so, but I'm going for a very fluid look. I just picked up a little bit of white to get some more motion in the liquid over on this side. I am going to do that along the edge as well, but I want to get this interior area done more so first before I start tackling that outside. I just picked up more brown so I can get this to blend in with the center area a little bit more. And again, right now I'm just kind of working on this interior area where the fluid is. I want this guy to look like he's inside the water, so I'm going to start to add a ripple around him where I feel that he is entering the liquid, not just the water, but the liquid. So I'm going to have it about halfway up the olive body, I guess, and I want it to look like it blends in with the left and the right. So again, if you want to put a little bit of water on your brush as you are doing this, that will help you to get the motion of the fluid or of your paint along it. And I can have a little ripple around this olive as he's entering in the liquid. So I just picked up a bit of white paint on my brush to get this to look like he has created a ripple in the fluid. But I want to be careful that I don't cover up the entire area, so you can still see where he has entered or you can still, the liquid is still translucent that's in the glass. And again, using a little bit of water on your brush can help with that. I want to do the same thing around this guy. Add a bit of a ripple around him because he's just chilling in the water. So I'm going to have this leg under the water. I'm just doing these little kind of curved lines. I want his knee to look like it's popping out of the water a little bit. So maybe his foot is popping out a little bit too. So you just have fun with this. Wherever you want it to pop out, just don't put a ripple. And I'm going to get this to look like he's just naturally creating this fluid to ripple around him, something like that. And if you feel like it's too light, just add a bit of the black and the brown back to it. It might even be a bit shadowed or a bit darker around this ripple from either a shadow of the olive or a shadow in the water or of the water, the fluid in the glass. And that's looking pretty good to me. It might be a little bit lighter in this back edge over here just to give it a bit more feel of it being liquid and having some reflections and stuff in it. Maybe a tiny touch in through there. And I feel that I have removed that outline pretty successfully along this area. So I'm going to start working on my other areas as well. I feel that the interior of this glass is pretty good. We already gave that a bit of a shadow along the lip. So all I'm really looking to do is get that edge to pop out and not look so much like an outline. So I just added a bit of white to my brush to give it a bit of a highlight along the edge, and I can do that over here too. And I just kind of painted on top of his arm a little bit, so that might be a little bit tricky of a spot. And again, if you bump into it, no worries. But when you're doing this highlight of sorts along the edge of your glass, you don't need it to be a solid line because the light will reflect or bounce off of it in different ways and in different areas. So it doesn't have to be the same bright white along the entire edge. You can actually have an area that is a bit brighter, let's say, in through here than over here. So just enjoy the process. Don't worry about it being terribly straight or perfect, because it can have those areas where it is lighter and darker than other areas. You just, if you can have it translate as a bright edge of the glass, great, and as if it is catching the reflection from areas. So that's looking pretty good to me. Now I'm going to tackle down in through here. And again, I have darker liquid here, so I'm going to, I feel like it's almost there, but I do want to make sure that those edges don't look too outliney. So I just added a bit of white to my brush to give myself a little bit more of a highlight in through here. And I'm just doing almost like a sketch type brush stroke where I'm just lightly tapping it in the direction of the glass itself. And if you were to look at an actual glass, with fluid in it, it is going to reflect everything that's around it. So that's why we're going to be in a minute putting a reflection of the olives in there as well. But right now I'm just trying to capture all of the other colors that are within the surrounding painting. So right now I'm just using a bit of black, and my white were on the brush, but I'm going to be putting a bit of brown on there in a second. I do want to make this olive down in the fluid or in the glass look like it's in the glass, so I need to put some kind of translucent appearance on top of it. So I just picked up a bit of brown because I know that the brown, it is nice and translucent for me, so that works for me. I've got a curve to the glass. It's giving me some nice reflections of the other areas. I think I want a little bit more white here, and then I'm going to just put a little splash around this guy here because he's entering into the water. So right now I have mostly white and brown on my brush at the same time. This is going to allow me to just kind of splash up some little spots. I'm not going full on white at this point. I will add a bit of white in a minute, but when you're doing a splash of sorts, you don't need to just use white. I'm using a combination of brown and white right now in order to give that dimensional element to the fluid that's being splashed. I think that's one of those things that we don't recognize as we're attempting to paint, because when we think of a splash, we just think foamy white. Well, that's true, but if you want to look realistic, you put a little dimension in it. You start with the darker tones and work your way to the light. So I just added a bit of white onto my brush, so I'll put a couple of little spots of white within this, and that's what's going to make it look even more three-dimensional. Maybe I've got a little bit of a splash coming out in through here, and then I'm going to put a couple of bubbles coming up from in through here, like this little guy underneath is breathing of sorts. So I just have my brown and the white, and I'm just going to do some marks that are coming up, and then they will submerge or bubble right up in through here. So this is a very minimal detail. It's not anything that is terribly in depth, but it adds that illusion to the painting. It draws your eye to there, and you see that there might be some air bubbles coming up. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step, so you can wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting the reflection of the olives within our martini glass. So I'm using my medium brush, and I'm predominantly, I don't think I'm going to be using any other colors other than that olive green that we created. The trick here is less is more. You do not need a lot of paint for this. So I'm just putting a teeny tiny bit on my brush, and I'm putting these reflections anywhere because everything in this glass, the fluid and the glass itself, is all of a reflective material. And there's olives everywhere. So I can put green wherever I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using almost like a dry brush technique and just kind of rubbing it onto my canvas, where you'll be able, it'll be translucent. You'll be able to see through it. You'll be able to see the colors behind it. I might add it more concentrated, maybe along the edge of the glass or something like that, but I'm going for kind of a see-through type look. So I have it on my brush right now, and let's say I want it in this area. I'm going to put it on here, and I'm really just rubbing it until I can see everything behind it. So it just adds almost like a glow of that green along the edge of it. So I can put it anywhere. I can put it down by in the water over here, so it's like it's glowing or reflecting that olive right in through there. And if you feel like you did too much, you can certainly take your brush, put a tiny bit of water on it, and you can pull some of that green off the and it will make it more see-through. It is beneficial to do this when the paint underneath it is dry, which yours is probably dry at this point, but if you have areas from the last step that might be a little bit wet, just kind of wait for those to dry a bit. I'm going to put some back in through here. I might have to redo that little leg a little bit because I seem to keep painting over it right now. That's all right. I'm going to put some on this edge of the glass over in through here, and every time I go to pick up paint, I'm really just picking up a teeny tiny bit on the edge of my brush, something like that. Maybe I'll put a bit in this liquid over in through here, and again, I'm hardly using any paint, and I'm just kind of rubbing it in. I know it will also get a little bit darker as it dries because it's translucent and it's going to take on whatever colors are underneath it. So if it is a bit too overbearing when it's wet, as long as I can still see through it, I know it'll dry a bit darker. I'm going to put some down along the edge of this glass and through here. This could be reflecting this guy or reflecting something else. And then maybe I'll just put a little bit on the edge in through here. And again, you could really put it wherever you want, but I think those are the only places. Oh, maybe I'll put a little in the fluid right in through here, but that's the only places I'm going to put it. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your reflections of your olives within your martini glass, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the highlights on our facial features and our limbs. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using yellow and white paint, and I use them both on my brush at the same time. I'm not pre-mixing a color because I want there to be variations in the highlights that I'm putting on here. So I'm just putting yellow and white. Oops, I need a little more white. Yellow and white on my brush at the same time. And again, my light source is up top. So when I go to do my features or my arms and my legs, I'm just putting a tiny little line of this light color on the top side of that particular feature or limb. So if I'm doing this little guy in through here, I'm going to put a light line at the top of it. I think I need a bit more white. You definitely want to be able to see it. His arm over here is behind this other leg, so I'm just going to put a tiny little line there, a line up his arm, and then maybe a couple little lines in his fingers, and then I'm going to do the same thing over on this guy right here. So I'm really just using the tip of my brush, and if you don't get it a clean line, it's okay. Don't fuss with it too much because your line will just get wider and wider and wider. But if you make a line that is too wide for you, you can always come back with the black. I forgot his eyes, so I'm going to go and do his eyes right now. I need a light line over his eyes like this. I'm just doing his eyebrows, but you could do his eyes also. I'm going to do a light line on the eyebrows. So yellow and white, I just keep reloading my brush with those two colors. I have to figure out which of these legs is on the side closer to me, and to me it's this one here. So that's the one that I'm going to do the continual line on the top, and then I'll do a line like this and a line on his foot. And you can see as I'm doing these lines, I'm really just kind of doing nice sketchy lines, but it's making the limbs and the features just pop right out of the canvas. So this guy right in through here, we'll do his face. I got his mouth in through here. Probably on the face you'll use a little bit more white, because that the faces have more light tones in them, and then when you're doing the limbs you might use a little bit more yellow involved. So I've got that, and then I've got his arm in through here. I think I have to hit this one with a little black spot, but I'll get that in a minute. And then this is his arm in through here, and you can see they're just popping right out, which makes me so happy. If you've watched me before, highlights make me really happy. It's like the icing on the cake for me. When I get into this leg, I'm going to kind of skip over some of these little ripples, so it really makes it look like his leg is in the water itself. And I think that part of the leg I'm going to have his foot's in the water. We'll just keep that like that. Yellow and white, just keep reloading my brush. Same thing with this guy in through here. I might have to redo part of that that black, because I painted over it a little bit when I was doing the details on the glass, but nothing I can't fix in a minute here. And again, I'm just adding this dainty little highlight, something like that, and I'm just going to repeat this step to all of them. So now I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to kind of go quickly down those limbs with a tiny little highlight line. And again, if your brush starts to get to the end of it gets too thick on you or starts to splay out, that's when you want to spin your brush in the side of your palette within the paint. That's what's going to make it nice and pointy for you. And again, you could use a touch of water on your brush as well. When you're using these lighter colors though, if you choose to use water within the mixture, they will end up drying much darker once they're dry than they are when they're wet, especially with water in them. So you might want to just, if you are going to use a little bit of water, you might end up having to do a second coat on it. I got these little features in through here. I know it's going to look like I'm doing the underside of them, but that's where the light is, so that's where my highlight is going on these. So, oh my god, they're so cute. They're making me happy with their little fun expressions on their faces. And again, I'm just taking my time as I'm doing these, so I can put those bright spots where I want them to be. And you might again find that you bump into things that you didn't really necessarily want to bump into, or your line isn't as clean as you wanted it to be. And I'm okay with a non-clean line, because I know that, you know, maybe their limbs are not super smooth. Maybe they have bumpy limbs. So if they have, you know, ripples on it, I'm okay. I got to decide which of these legs is in front, and to me this one on the left would be in front, so that's the one that I'm going to do the full line on. And then the other one I will do a partial line. I'll skip it over that front leg, something like that. And then, oh, I got this. I keep forgetting the biggest guy over here. I'm not quite sure why I keep forgetting him. You'd think that he'd be the one that I would see the most because he's so big, but he's far away from me. So that's, and he's got super straight arms apparently. At least that arm's super straight. This one's going to be a little bit, he'll have an elbow on one arm and not on the other. So he's a special kind of olive. He's got magic arms with no elbows. So I'm going to put a little bit more white on here so you can see it a bit more. There we go. And then I'm going to put it on his mouth, on the top side of the mouth. Oh my god, these are so fun. Putting some on his leg in through here. Put a little bit more yellow on my brush. And again, if you make your lines a little bit wider than you wanted to, you can always come back with a bit of black, especially with that dark background. The black will help to just minimize them for you. I got this little one over here. This one totally looks like a little girl to me. Not quite sure why a little girl would be playing in an olive party, but you never know. You need to have all kinds of people, or all kinds of people. These are not people. All kinds of olives represented in an olive party to be socially correct. We need everybody represented. So I'm just doing my top ones over here, little highlight here, little highlight there. We can see all of these limbs. They're just popping out. And I think that's it. I think I got them all. I got them all. All right, we got one tiny little step left to go. It's going to be with this small brush. So when you get all your highlights on, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint. I do mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to be your identifying mark is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a fun, spirited image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.